play Saturday night against the Colts, and we now welcome to the show a man who won 3 Super Bowls with that team, and he's the Vice President of Player Personnel under Bill Belichick and worked alongside that group for years. He is now on the NFL Network, and he's a dear friend of ours. He joins us on Tuesday. Scott Pioli, welcome.
What's up, Scott?
To the virtual breakfast table.
Good morning, everybody. Great to be here. Great to be here.
Scott, let's start with last night's game, because you've been on the show and you've been having some question marks about how this Rams team was going to just suddenly gel together overnight. They finally got a really quality win on the road, down 5 starters due to COVID. What did you make of the Rams' victory last night over the Cardinals?
Peter, you're absolutely right. I've been a little bit rough on them because I just haven't seen enough. But I give them a lot of credit because last night on the road against a good team, they won, even under difficult circumstances. But to me, the key last night, I always talk about their top players and their talent needing to play well. Last night, they got that on both sides of the ball. Defensively, Aaron Donald was an absolute wrecking show. He had 3 sacks. He had 6 pressures, another 5 QB hits, I think. He was unblockable. To me, the other place he showed up was he drew holding penalties against the offense that were key penalties and brought plays back. Then on the flip side, the player that they needed to play the best was Matthew Stafford, and he did that to a T. You know, the last couple of games, they've had 0 turnovers, meaning the last 2 games, and that's been the key to their wins. Because, again, prior to that, the 3 previous games, they've had 7 turnovers. Stafford threw 5 interceptions. 3 of those were pick 6. So their best players last night played really well. But to me, one of the key things that happened last night was post-game of the interview with Matthew Stafford. They asked him how important that win was, and I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially what he said, this win was good, not great. He said, it was good, but what we need to do is make sure that we start winning more games, and we can't let this be a standalone. Much more work to be done.
Absolutely, especially if they want to beat Tampa or Green Bay when it counts. Scott, speaking of Tampa, you tweeted about the Bills, who played Tampa this weekend, specifically about the Bills' run game during their matchup. And you talked about this. It was the strange statistical anomaly. It was the first time since '91 an NFL team has played an entire first half without a running play from a running back. So, Scott, are you concerned about it? Was it a one-game thing, or is this a problem moving forward? How concerned are you?
Kyle, I'm pretty concerned because late in the season, we can see that the best teams and the teams that are ascending are developing a running game. And if you don't run the ball, there's so many ways that it impacts your offense. It actually impacts the protection. It impacts the overall passing game, because if teams can dial in on one thing and pin their ears back and come after your quarterback, that's a problem. And it's not just the running game, because they had a running game with Josh Allen. He was successful. He produced yards, but they weren't using the running back. So in order to produce the threat of the run game, to hold linebackers, to improve the passing game, they're going to have to run the ball. And, you know, it's interesting. I understood why they drafted Josh Allen when they did. They wanted a big, strong-armed quarterback that would be able to cut through the wind and the weather in late November, December, and hopefully at home in January. They've got that. But the other thing, again, that's happening around the league with the teams that win this time of year, they have a running game because they know how important it is to keep the ball on the ground if you're going to be outdoors.
Scott, on Sunday Night Football, the Packers put up 45 points on the Bears.
Your Packers.
The second highest scoring game in the history of the matchup, and I think you know they've played 257,000 times. We saw a lot of the best duo in the NFL, as far as I'm concerned, Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams. So from someone who has been around the game as long as you have, does Rodgers to Adams remind you of any other all-time great combos?
Brian, for as long as I have him, I'm kind of feeling a little bit of age shade there. But yeah, I've been around about 30 years at working and then as a fan. To me, it's so difficult when you cross over eras and generations and trying to compare, you know, players against other players because the game has changed so much. But just looking at the Packers alone, and you look at the players that they've had in terms of the duos, they've had Favre to Sharp, Favre to Driver. I mean, heck, go back to